So now that we have a visual representation of the quantity supplied, as I did with demand, I'm going to ask myself, okay, the ceteris is not always paribus. So what is going to happen if something other than the price of milk changes? So as before, if something changes which isn't the price of milk, that's going to show up as a shift in the curve. And this is where it's really important to remember the axes are flipped. Right? So what you want to remember is that supposing, let us say, something like wages went up. So input costs, technology, all of these things that can affect supplier decisions by affecting the costs or production conditions. So here's an example. Let us say that a study came out indicating that bovine growth hormone is present in milk, and people say you have to do something in order to fix the way in which you produce so that you're not using that much bovine growth hormone. So the big shift is that there is now a new law which is going to change production conditions. It's going to become more expensive to produce milk. Right? Remember, I'm focusing here only on the conditions of supply. So you don't look at this and say, oh, bovine growth hormone, people will buy less milk. That's the demand side. And the producers aren't looking at that. They're looking at their own costs, right? Or let us say that there is a government rule that you need to test your cows for mad cow disease. And so that changes costs. So all of these things can happen. Wages go up. So something happens to make it more expensive to produce milk. Your costs of production go up. What this means is that at each price, you will end up supplying less than you did before, because if your costs go up and the price is the same, you're getting less profits. You're not going to sell as much. You're not going to want to sell as much or supply as much. What this means is at each price, now look at how this arrow goes. You supply less. That is an inward or leftward shift of the curve. If you think of up and down, you'll get confused because you'll think this is going up, but it's not. This is not an increase. This S2 is not higher, it's not above, it's not more. This is actually a reduction in supply. So think of it as a leftward shift, an inward shift. If, however, say something happened, there was a technological breakthrough which made it possible for you to engage in pasteurization of milk a lot more cheaply than it used to before. So this technological change is going to make it cheaper for you to produce milk. So that means you'd be willing to supply more milk at each price. That would show up as an outward or rightward shift. So S3 reflects an increase in supply. So as before, we're going to use vocabulary that indicates what we're talking about. When we talk about responses to the price of the good, we're going to say there was a change in quantity supplied. That's a movement along the curve. But if we're talking about changes in other conditions and supply responses to changes in other conditions, we're going to call that a change in supply or a shift in supply. A change in supply, the whole curve is moving in or out. So what we've got now is we've got the law of supply. It shows us that when the price of a good goes up, the quantity supplied of the good goes up. Ceteris paribus, that shows up as an upward sloping supply curve. And when conditions other than the price of the good change that affect supply decisions, that is going to show up as a shift inward, which is a reduction, or outward, which is an increase of the supply curve. And we are going to call that a change in supply.